The moment a royal prince threatens legal action, the expectation is simple: silence the critics, shut down the speculation, and restore control over the narrative. But this time, the opposite happened. Instead of quieting the noise, the threat seems to have ignited a storm so loud that it's echoing across television studios, online forums, and royal commentary circles everywhere. Because the people at the center of this confrontation, Tom Bower and Lady Colin Campbell, didn't retreat, didn't soften their words, and certainly didn't show fear. If anything, they leaned forward. And now Prince Harry finds himself in a situation where the very legal pressure meant to defend his reputation may have pulled him into an even bigger spotlight.
Is it possible the ghostwriter dislikes Harry? I know people who know him. I've heard interesting things about him. I know he's, as I have said previously, very into the 12-step program and the whole druggy-alky business. It is not the job of a ghostwriter to do anything but put the thoughts of the incompetent who requires a ghostwriter.
Which is very revelatory, as you know, about Meghan and Harry. I got absolutely no help from the palace whatsoever, on the contrary.
I think more people want something in-depth in terms of the review of the Tom Bower book than don't. So some people just wanted one episode, other people want more.
No, I choose people who don't want to be written about, on the whole, whose lives are shrouded in mystery, and they want to hide their secrets, and I just love digging away to find out what they don't want to.
And that is where the tension really begins. Because in the strange and unpredictable world of royal gossip, threats of legal action rarely make stories disappear. Instead, they often transform them into something much more explosive. Suddenly, the conversation stops being casual commentary and starts sounding like the prelude to a courtroom drama where reputations, credibility, and carefully crafted public images could all be placed under a microscope.
I personally think there are times when he should have. You are absolutely right. The book is littered with inconsistencies and anomalies, where Harry is on the one hand raging about people and how terrible they are because they are doing to him exactly what he is doing to someone else, but he's a wonderful person, but they're terrible. When I was pregnant, and Harry says, oh, there was a little discussion before we got married. Well, something's wrong right there, but anyway.
I think it's mixed. I think that once she saw Meghan when she came to London in 2016, 2018, and she reached out to Victoria to get freebies.
The situation escalated fast, and suddenly the conversation wasn't just tabloid chatter anymore. It turned into whispers about hidden details, disputed timelines, and the kind of claims that could shake public perception in a major way. Online clips, commentary, and speculation started spreading like wildfire, pushing this story from casual gossip into something much bigger and more intense. The escalation was almost immediate. One moment it was simply another chapter in the ongoing saga surrounding Harry and Meghan's complicated relationship with critics and commentators. The next moment, it felt like a confrontation waiting to happen. Because once the possibility of a legal showdown enters the conversation, everything changes. Questions become sharper, allegations sound louder, and every statement suddenly feels like it might end up being examined line by line in a courtroom.
He had to admit that actually those stories had been published by other newspapers, days prior, and that's where they got the information from, or the fact sometimes the palace released information themselves and Prince Harry wasn't aware of it, or the fact that, it was just sources and friends or people close to Prince Harry.
And I must say, it's always beyond Meghan. Meghan doesn't believe in reconciliation. Look at her appalling relationship with her father. She's a hard nut.
All Samantha's questions from her lawyers, whether she lied about Samantha, about Thomas Markle in her notorious interview with Oprah Winfrey. So that's a major breakthrough for Samantha Markle, for Thomas Markle, and for the truth.
What began as questions about personal events quickly morphed into talk of potential court battles and reputation risks, with commentators suggesting this could expose details that were never meant for public discussion. The phrase, "the palace never wanted poured," started popping up everywhere, adding even more heat to the narrative. Sources claim Harry is deeply frustrated behind the scenes, and insiders describe the mood as tense and emotional. According to reports, he's weighing serious legal options not just to protect his name, but to challenge what he believes are unfair claims. That frustration, according to observers, is easy to understand, because what Harry likely expected was a firm line in the sand, a warning that critics had gone too far. Instead, the response from those critics sounded almost like an invitation to test the claims, challenge the narrative, and potentially bring everything into the open.
Meghan left Britain and then did the Oprah Winfrey interview. It's been really poisonous.
Well, he does it because he needs a profile. That's the only way they can get money, by showing a profile. And for Netflix, everything is built around the future documentary series to promote the Sussexes.
Is married to a professional journalist who was the editress of the Evening Standard.
Fondness for, shall we say, stretching the truth. Could the sequel case see Harry caught up in his own web of lies? Well, to answer this and much more, I'm delighted to welcome the world's top royal author. He, of course, published Revenge, Meghan, Harry and the War Between the Windsors, Tom Bower. So, Tom, this feels like a significant development tonight. What's happening?
Well, if I was Meghan, I'd be undoubtedly very worried tonight what the judge decides.
The controversy centers around critics pointing out what they call inconsistencies or gaps in publicly shared information about private family matters, and they didn't hold back when raising those concerns. Observers say the reaction was intense once those comments aired publicly, with talk that Harry felt personally targeted rather than casually criticized. From his perspective, supporters argue the commentary crossed a line into questioning his integrity and intentions. Meanwhile, critics claim they're simply asking fair questions, creating a standoff that feels more like a showdown than a debate. And that word, showdown, is exactly what many royal watchers are now using, because the personalities involved are not known for backing down quietly. Tom Bower has built an entire reputation around digging into uncomfortable details and publishing controversial findings about royal figures. Lady Colin Campbell, meanwhile, has never been shy about delivering blunt commentary that ignites debate almost instantly. And then came the line that truly turned this story into something unforgettable. A line that spread across commentary shows and social media threads almost instantly because of how boldly it was delivered. And that is where the pressure surrounding Prince Harry begins to multiply, because legal threats can be powerful, but they can also be dangerous. Once a conflict moves into the legal arena, the rules change completely. Evidence matters, records matter, testimony matters, and sometimes the person initiating the lawsuit finds themselves facing questions they never expected to answer. Meanwhile, the silence from Buckingham Palace only deepens the intrigue. The familiar royal strategy of saying very little might protect the institution from becoming entangled in speculation, but it also leaves a vacuum that gossip, theories, and commentary quickly rush to fill. And right now, that vacuum is filled with a single burning question circulating through royal circles and media discussions alike. If this really becomes a courtroom battle, what could come out? Because for Prince Harry, this isn't just about critics anymore. It's about reputation, credibility, and the narrative he and Meghan have spent years building. A narrative built on personal truth, public vulnerability, and a willingness to challenge the royal institution itself. But critics argue that if the story ever reaches a courtroom, the narrative might no longer belong to Harry alone. And that is exactly why the pressure is rising. Because once the possibility of a courtroom battle enters the royal conversation, the entire atmosphere changes. What used to be dismissed as commentary or opinion suddenly started sounding like potential testimony. Observers across the media landscape began asking the same question again and again. If Prince Harry actually follows through with legal action, how much of the private story behind the public image could end up exposed in court? And that question alone has turned the tension surrounding this situation into something much bigger than a typical celebrity feud. What started as criticism from royal commentators has evolved into a standoff that feels like a chess match where every move carries serious consequences. Online communities quickly noticed that something unusual was happening. Instead of fading away like so many past controversies, the discussion kept expanding, spreading into wider audiences and drawing attention from viewers who had previously ignored the royal drama altogether. The situation escalated fast, and suddenly the conversation wasn't just tabloid chatter anymore. It turned into whispers about hidden details, disputed timelines, and the kind of claims that could shake public perception in a major way. On Online clips, commentary, and speculation started spreading like wildfire, pushing this story from casual gossip into something much bigger and more intense. The intensity only increased when commentators began digging deeper into past interviews, public appearances, and statements that had once seemed harmless. Suddenly, those moments were being examined again, this time with a much more critical eye. Viewers slowed down old footage, replayed speeches, and compared timelines, searching for patterns or contradictions. The atmosphere shifted from curiosity to investigation almost overnight. And then Tom Bower introduced a statement that ignited an entirely new wave of debate. During one broadcast, he claimed that his team had attempted to confirm certain key details connected to events that had previously been accepted as fact. But according to his own account, they found no clear trace within the records they checked. For critics of the Sussex narrative, that claim sounded like an alarm bell. For supporters, it sounded like another controversial accusation. Either way, it pushed the story into an even more heated phase because once questions about documentation enter the conversation, speculation spreads at lightning speed. Observers began asking what those missing confirmations might mean and why the claims were being made so publicly. Some analysts suggested that even if nothing dramatic emerged, the very existence of the question could affect how people perceive the story surrounding Harry and Meghan. Meanwhile, Lady Colin Campbell delivered commentary that was even more direct, referencing viral clips of Meghan during pregnancy appearances and arguing that certain visual details had raised doubts among online observers. Her remarks reignited discussions that had previously existed only in smaller corners of the internet, suddenly bringing them into mainstream conversation. That shift turned social media into a frenzy of amateur investigation. Clips were slowed down, screenshots were shared, and every movement captured on camera years earlier became the subject of intense debate. What had once seemed like far-fetched speculation suddenly felt, to some viewers, like a mystery waiting to be solved. But while critics continued pushing the discussion forward, supporters of Harry and Meghan strongly rejected those narratives, arguing that the couple had already endured years of unfair scrutiny and misinformation. They insisted that the accusations being circulated were nothing more than attempts to undermine the couple's credibility. And in the middle of that escalating debate stood Prince Harry himself, facing a dilemma that many legal experts described as extremely delicate, because pursuing a defamation case might silence critics in theory, but in practice it could create a courtroom environment where every detail surrounding the dispute becomes subject to examination. Documents could be requested, records could be scrutinized, witnesses could be questioned. In other words, a legal strategy designed to regain control might actually remove control entirely. Analysts began pointing out that defamation battles often carry this exact risk. The person filing the lawsuit hopes to prove their reputation was damaged unfairly, but the legal process itself can invite intense scrutiny into private areas of their life. And that possibility is precisely why the bold responses from Tom Bower and Lady Colin Campbell caught so much attention. Neither of them appeared intimidated by the threat of legal action. In fact, their public statements suggested the opposite, a willingness to defend their claims and let the legal system determine what is true. That kind of confidence immediately fueled public curiosity. People tend to pay attention when someone appears completely unafraid of a potential lawsuit, especially when the person they're challenging happens to be a member of the British royal family. Behind the scenes, royal observers believe the situation is creating serious concern because for the monarchy, reputation has always depended on a sense of stability and unquestioned legitimacy. Any controversy that introduces uncertainty around personal narratives or family history carries symbolic weight far beyond the individuals directly involved. Some historians even point out that rumors and questions about lineage have historically shaken powerful dynasties throughout history. In earlier centuries, those whispers could remain confined to private circles, but in the modern digital world, they can spread globally within minutes. That is exactly what appears to be happening now. Social media platforms are flooded with debates, commentary panels continue analyzing the situation, and audiences around the world are watching closely to see who makes the next move. At the same time, Buckingham Palace has maintained its careful strategy of minimal public comment. The official message remains the same short response repeated whenever speculation grows too intense. We do not engage in speculation. But instead of calming the situation, that restraint seems to have produced the opposite effect. The absence of detailed responses leaves space for theories, and theories quickly evolve into conversations that dominate headlines and online discussions alike. Meanwhile, Tom Bower has continued expanding his criticism beyond the immediate controversy, suggesting that the Sussex brand itself may be under increasing pressure. According to his perspective, perspective, media projects, publishing deals, and business ventures tied to the couple's public image might depend heavily on maintaining a certain narrative. If public trust begins to shift, critics argue, the ripple effects could extend far beyond one dispute with royal commentators. Lady Colin Campbell echoed similar themes in her commentary, questioning whether expectations about status, wealth, and royal influence had shaped decisions made by the couple since stepping back from official duties. Her words were sharp and controversial, but they resonated with audiences who had already been following the drama closely. And now, as the tension continues to build, Prince Harry faces a choice that many analysts describe as a high-risk gamble. If he steps back from the legal threat, critics may claim victory and interpret the silence as avoidance. But if he proceeds with legal action, the courtroom could become a stage where the entire story, every claim, every accusation, every unanswered question is examined in full view of the public. That is why this moment feels so significant, because what began as criticism from two outspoken commentators has transformed into a pressure point in the ongoing battle over reputation, credibility, and public trust surrounding Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. The stakes have rarely felt higher, and the world is watching closely, waiting to see whether this confrontation fades quietly into another chapter of royal controversy or explodes into the courtroom showdown that both sides now appear ready for.